The chamber fell silent as Ambassador Chun Wei stood before the assembled representatives of 200 civilizations. The Galactic Council's Grand Hall stretched upward for nearly a kilometer, its walls carved from living crystal that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Each species sat in their designated atmospheric pods, separated by shimmering force fields that maintained their unique environmental requirements. The methane breathers of Titan, 9 huddled in their frozen compartments, while the plasma dancers from the Omega cluster flickered like contained lightning storms. Chun wore a simple black suit. No breathing apparatus, no environmental shield. Just human flesh and bone standing in the neutral atmosphere that the Council had agreed upon 3,000 years ago. His presence alone violated a dozen unspoken rules. Humans were supposed to be gone by now. The Speaker of the Council, a towering Velkari, whose crystalline body refracted light into rainbow patterns, raised one of its 7 limbs. The gesture commanded absolute attention across the known galaxy. When it spoke, the words came not as sound, but as direct neural transmission that every species could comprehend. Humanity, you were catalogued 6,000 cycles ago. Your sun was measured, your resources calculated, your technological ceiling determined. The speaker's thoughts carried the weight of inevitability. Every species reaches their apex. Every civilization finds their limit. Yet you persist in advancing. The Council asks simply, why? Chun had prepared for this moment his entire life. 3 generations of diplomats in his family had known this question would eventually come. His grandmother had whispered it to him as a child, explaining that one day, someone would have to answer for humanity's greatest crime, refusing to stop. Honored Speaker, representatives of the Galactic Council, Chun began, his voice amplified through translation matrices to reach every corner of the hall. We advance because we do not understand how to stop. A ripple of confusion spread through the assembly. The insectoid chorus from Kepler 442b chittered in their pods, their collective consciousness struggling to process such a statement. The ancient wayfarers, beings of pure energy who had achieved technological singularity before Earth's sun had formed. Dimmed with what might have been concern, the speaker's crystalline form shifted colors from calm blue to agitated orange. Elaborate, human. Your answer approaches nonsense. Chun walked to the center of the chamber, where a holographic display awaited his input. With a gesture, he summoned an image of Earth as it had been 6,000 years ago, when the first Council Scouts had catalogued humanity. Primitive radio waves. Chemical rockets. A species barely reaching beyond its own atmosphere. When your scouts arrived, they performed the standard analysis, Chun continued. You examined our star's fuel reserves. You calculated when our sun would expand and consume our world. You factored in our resource depletion rates, our genetic limitations, our mathematical ceiling for technological advancement. Based on every known species in the galaxy, you determined humanity would peak at approximately level 4 technology within 2,000 years, then stagnate for another 1,000 before either achieving steady state or collapsing into extinction. The hologram shifted, showing humanity's actual trajectory. The line didn't curve toward a plateau. It kept rising. We should have stopped advancing 3,000 years ago, Chun said quietly. According to your models, we should have hit our cognitive limit, our creative ceiling, our final technological state. But we didn't. A member of the Eternal Concordat, a species that had maintained perfect technological stasis for 40,000 years, transmitted a question. Your genetic structure has not evolved significantly. Your brain capacity remains within standard parameters. How do you bypass the natural limits? Chun smiled, and it was not a comforting expression. We teach our children that limits are temporary. He expanded the hologram to show human history, not as the Council had recorded it, but as humanity had lived it. The first aircraft that flew for 12 seconds. The first computer that filled an entire room to perform basic calculations. The first rocket that exploded on the launch pad 17 times before it finally reached space. Every human child learns about failure, Chun explained. We tell them stories about people who were told something was impossible, and they did it anyway. Not because they were genetically superior or cognitively enhanced. They did it because they didn't believe in the ceiling. The Velkari speaker's color shifted to deep purple, a hue Chun's briefing documents identified as profound discomfort. You are describing chaos. Civilization requires structure. Progress requires limits. Without boundaries, without knowing when to stop, a species consumes itself. Yes, Chun agreed. We have nearly destroyed ourselves 47 times in recorded history. 12 times we came within hours of total extinction. But we survived. And each time we learned something new. The hologram now displayed humanity's current achievements. Cities that floated between dimensions. Ships that could fold space without the standard quantum drives the rest of the galaxy used. Medical technology that had made death optional rather than inevitable. Energy sources that drew power from the quantum foam itself, tapping into the underlying structure of reality. You're using Type 7 technology, a representative from the Silicon Compact transmitted? Its mechanical voice crackling with disbelief. That's not possible for a carbon-based species. The mathematical proofs are absolute. We don't always understand the math first, Sean replied. Sometimes we build something because we think it might work and figure out why it works later. Your species proves something is possible before attempting it. We attempt it to see if it's possible. The chamber erupted into transmitted chaos. Hundreds of species all broadcasting their confusion, their concern, their fear. The concept was fundamentally alien to them. Every other civilization in the galaxy had reached their plateau, found their comfortable level of technology, and stopped. Some had done it deliberately, seeing the dangers of unlimited growth. Others had simply run out of ways to advance, their cognitive architecture unable to comprehend the next level of complexity. Humanity had no such governor. The speaker raised multiple limbs, calling for silence. The telepathic noise subsided. You are describing a species without wisdom. Progress without purpose is not advancement. It is mere thrashing against the inevitable. Chun nodded slowly. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps we are fools stumbling forward in the dark. But here's what troubles the Council, isn't it? You brought us here not to celebrate our advancement, but because you're afraid. The word hung in the neutral atmosphere like a physical thing. Afraid of what, human? The speaker demanded. Afraid that we'll keep going, Chun said softly. Every other species in this chamber has been catalogued. You know their limits. You can predict their trajectories for the next 1,000,000 years. They're stable, reliable, safe. He gestured to the hologram of humanity's rising curve. You don't know where our line ends. You can't predict what will become. And for species that have spent hundreds of thousands of years in perfect equilibrium, unpredictability is the greatest threat imaginable. The wayfarers pulsed with sudden intensity. Their transmitted thought carried the weight of eons. He speaks truth. We have modeled their trajectory. In every simulation, humanity either destroys itself or becomes something we cannot comprehend. There is no middle ground, no plateau, no stability. Chun turned to face the energy beings directly. Then you understand our answer. We advance because the alternative is stagnation, and stagnation feels like death to us. Every human carries in their genetic memory the knowledge that our ancestors survived ice ages, supervolcanoes, plagues, and predators by adapting faster than the world could kill them. We are the descendants of the ones who refused to stop running, stop learning, stop trying. The council chamber fell into a silence deeper than before. 200 civilizations contemplated the thing standing before them. This representative of a species that had no off switch, no satisfaction point, no final form. Finally, the Velkari speaker transmitted a single question, and Chun knew it was the real reason he had been summoned. What happens when you reach the limits of physical reality itself? What will you do when there is nothing left to advance toward? Chun met the crystalline being's multifaceted gaze and smiled again, that same unsettling expression. "We'll find out together," he said, "because we're not stopping." The emergency session convened 3 hours after Chun's testimony. The Grand Hall had been reconfigured, its atmospheric pods rearranged to accommodate only the Council's eldest members, those species who had witnessed the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations. Chun stood in the center once more, but this time the atmosphere felt different, heavier, the kind of weight that came before important decisions. Eternal Concordat spoke first. Their representative, a being that had lived for 600,000 years in perfect synthetic preservation. "We have existed in our current form for 40 millennia. Our technology has not changed in that time because we perfected it. We eliminated war, disease, scarcity, and suffering. We have no crime, no conflict, no chaos. Why would we ever change what is already perfect?" Chun had studied the Concordat extensively. They were held up as the model civilization, the example every species was encouraged to emulate, stable, peaceful, eternal, and utterly, completely boring. "With respect, honored elder, I have a question for you," Chun said carefully. "What did your people create yesterday?" The Concordat representative tilted its synthetic head, photoreceptors focusing on the human. "Create, we maintain. We preserve. We have already created all that needs to exist." "What about art? Music? Stories?" "We have 40,000 years of archived culture, more than any individual could experience in 100 lifetimes. New creation would merely be repetition, with slight variation. Inefficient." Chun pulled up his personal tablet, a device that would have seemed like magic to humans from just a century ago. "This morning, before I came to this session, I read a novel written by a 14-year-old girl on Mars. It's about a mechanic who falls in love with an artificial intelligence during a space battle. It made me cry during breakfast." He looked around the chamber. "It was published yesterday. Tomorrow, 1,000 more stories will be published. Most will be terrible. Some will be brilliant. All of them will be new, because some human somewhere couldn't stop themselves from creating." The Silicon Compact's representative, a distributed intelligence running across 17 crystalline matrices, chimed in. "Inefficiency, redundancy. Why create inferior copies of existing works?" "Because the 14-year-old girl needed to write it," Chun replied simply. "Not for profit or efficiency. Because the story existed in her head and she had to let it out. We can't help it. It's how we're built." A member of the chorus transmitted a complex harmonic pattern that translated roughly to, "You waste resources on redundant creativity. We share all thoughts through our hive mind. When one knows something, all know it. Perfect efficiency." Chun nodded respectfully. "And when was the last time one of your collective had an idea that surprised the rest?" The silence that followed was answer enough. The wayfarers pulsed gently, their energy forms casting dancing shadows across the crystal walls. Their transmission came through with a texture of deep sadness. "We remember when we were like you, chaotic, inefficient, constantly striving. Then we solved the final equation. We discovered how to convert matter directly to thought, to live as pure consciousness. We transcended physical limitation. They dimmed slightly. We have not had a new thought in 200,000 years. We exist in perfect understanding of all that was, is, and will be within known physical laws. We are complete. Are you happy? Chun asked quietly. The question seemed to startle the ancient beings. Their glow flickered erratically before stabilizing. Happiness is a chemical response to external stimuli. We have moved beyond such primitive reactions. That's not an answer. The Velkari speaker interrupted, its crystalline form shifting through agitated color patterns. Enough philosophy. We must address the practical concern. Humanity's continued advancement destabilizes the galactic order. Your species now possesses technology that exceeds 70% of Council members. In another 1,000 years, you will surpass us all. What then? Chun had known this confrontation was inevitable. The Council maintained order through a careful hierarchy. The oldest species held the most advanced technology, and thus the most power. Younger species were guided, controlled, and kept in their designated tiers. Humanity had shattered that structure simply by refusing to stop climbing. What do you want us to do? Chun asked. Stop researching? Stop inventing? Stop asking questions? Yes, the speaker replied bluntly. Find your equilibrium. Accept sufficiency. Join the civilized galaxy in contentment. We tried that, Chun said, and for the first time, his voice carried an edge of anger. 4,000 years ago, a faction on Earth argued exactly what you're suggesting. They said we had enough technology. We should stop advancing and focus on perfecting what we had. They called themselves the Plateau Movement. Do you know what happened? The council members waited in silence. They lasted for 3 generations. Then a 12-year-old boy in their main city invented a new type of solar panel in his garage because he wanted to help his grandmother afford electricity. The movement collapsed within a decade because you can't legislate away human curiosity. You can't make laws against imagination. We tried to stop ourselves, and we failed. The Silicon Compact processed this information across its distributed network. Then you admit you cannot control your own nature. You are a species at the mercy of your base impulses. This is precisely why limits must be externally imposed. Chun felt his pulse quicken. This was the threat he had been warned about. The reason his grandmother had looked so haunted when she spoke about this day. You're going to try to limit us by force. The Velkari speaker's colors settled into a steady, determined crimson. The Council has protocols for species that cannot self-regulate. Technology restrictions. Enforced development caps. For the good of galactic stability. You mean you're going to cage us. We prefer to. Think of it as guidance toward maturity. Chun looked around the chamber at the assembled. Representatives of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations. Beings who had achieved wonders humanity could barely comprehend. Beings who had also stopped growing, stopped dreaming, stopped becoming anything more than they already were. I need to tell you something about humans, Chun said slowly. Something your catalogs and analyses missed. We have this saying, give me liberty or give me death. It's old, from before we reached the stars. It means some things matter more to us than survival. The eternal concordat synthetic being leaned forward. That is irrational. Survival is the primary imperative of all biological life. For most species, yes. But humans have this flaw, this glitch in our programming. We'd rather die free than live in a cage, no matter how comfortable you make it. Chun pulled up another hologram, showing Earth's bloodiest wars, its most brutal revolutions. This is what we do when someone tries to limit us. We burn ourselves down before we accept chains. The chorus transmitted in dissonant harmony. Madness. You would choose extinction over guidance? Every single time. Chun let each word fall like a hammer. You can try to restrict our technology. You can blockade our space. You can threaten us with your advanced weapons and ancient power. But you cannot make us stop without killing us all. And even then, you'll have to be thorough. Because if even one human ship escapes, if even one colony survives in some forgotten corner of space, we'll keep going. We'll rebuild. We'll advance. We'll come back. That's what we do. The chamber fell into shocked silence. No species had ever spoken to the council this way. The very concept of resistance to their guidance was alien to civilizations that had learned to accept their place in the cosmic hierarchy. The wayfarers pulsed urgently. He speaks truth. We have run the simulations. Humanity cannot be controlled without complete annihilation. Even then, the probability of missing a hidden colony is significant. And if they believe we are attempting genocide, they will unite with a ferocity our models cannot adequately predict. The Valkyrie speaker's colors cycled through patterns Chun's briefing documents had never mentioned. Combinations that suggested emotions the Valkyrie might not have felt in millennia. Fear, yes, but also something else. Something that might have been recognition. You would fight the entire galaxy? The speaker asked. We would die trying, Chun confirmed. But here's the thing you need to understand. We don't want to fight you. We don't want to destabilize your careful order. We just want to be left alone to keep doing what we do. Let us advance. Let us explore. Let us become whatever we're going to become. We're not threatening you. We're not demanding anything from you. We just refuse to be stopped. The Eternal Concordat spoke again, its ageless voice carrying a strange note of what might have been curiosity. And what if your advancement leads to your own destruction? What if you reach too far and annihilate yourselves? Chun smiled sadly. Then that's our choice to make. Every species in this chamber has chosen their path. You chose perfection and stasis. The chorus chose collective unity. The wayfarers chose transcendence. Let us choose to keep running forward, even if we eventually run off a cliff. That is not wisdom, the speaker insisted. No, Chun agreed. But it's who we are, and we will not apologize for it. The debate raged for 6 days. Chun remained in the council chamber, sustained by nutrient packages and brief rest periods in a corner of the vast hall. The galaxy's elder species argued in languages that predated human civilization, discussing what to do about the species that refused to accept its place. On the third day, a representative from the Forgotten Reaches arrived. The far observers were rarely seen at council sessions. They existed in the dark spaces between galaxies, studying the universe from a distance that bordered on disinterest. Their representative appeared as a shimmering absence, a hole in space that spoke with the voice of distant stars. We have watched humanity since they first split the atom, the absence said. We have seen this pattern before. The council chamber stilled. The far observers had existed for millions of years, long enough to have witnessed the birth and death of entire galactic civilizations. If they recognized something in humanity's pattern, it demanded attention. Explain, the Valkyrie speaker commanded, its crystalline body pulsing with intense violet light. The absence rippled. 67 million years ago, in the Andromeda Galaxy, there was a species called the Inheritors. They refused to plateau. They kept advancing, kept pushing, kept asking questions no one else dared to ask. The Galactic Council of that era attempted to restrict them. The war lasted 3,000 years and consumed 12% of all stars in that galaxy. Chun felt ice form in his stomach. What happened to them? They won, the far observer stated simply. They drove the restrictive species into extinction or hiding. Then, having nothing left to fight against, they turned inward. They asked the final question. Which was? The Eternal Concordat prompted. What lies beyond this universe? The absence seemed to pulse with something like amusement. They built a device, a gateway. They stepped through it to see what existed on the other side of reality itself. We do not know if they survived. Their entire civilization, every ship, every station, every planet, simply vanished in a single moment. They left behind only their archives and a message. We go to see what else there is. The chamber processed this information in stunned silence. Chun felt a strange mixture of pride and terror. Pride that another species had shared humanity's refusal to accept limits. Terror at what that refusal had ultimately cost them. The silicon compact's crystalline matrices flickered rapidly. This is the danger we speak of. Unchecked advancement leads to self-annihilation. Humanity must be stopped before they achieve similar catastrophe. But the far observer's absence shifted position, moving closer to where Chun stood. You misunderstand the lesson. The inheritors were not destroyed by their curiosity. They chose to leave. They had answered every question this universe could pose. They had solved every problem, built every possible technology, understood every physical law. They became bored with existence as we know it, so they went somewhere else. That's insane, the chorus transmitted in discordant harmony. To abandon everything certain for complete unknown? To you, yes, the far observer agreed. To them, it was the only choice that made sense. They had completed this level of existence. Time to see what the next level held. Chun found his voice. Are you saying humanity might do the same thing? We are saying humanity will do exactly the same thing, given sufficient time. You are following the identical pattern. The question is not whether you will eventually transcend this reality, but whether the Council will try to stop you before you get there, and whether anyone will survive the attempt. The Velkari speaker's colors cycled through patterns of deep confusion. This is unprecedented. The Council has never faced a species with such trajectory. Our entire purpose is to maintain stability, to guide younger species toward sustainable equilibrium. If we allow humanity to continue unchecked, it undermines everything we have built. A new voice entered the debate, one that made Chun's blood run cold. The architects had been silent throughout the entire proceeding, observing from their isolated pod at the chamber's peak. They were the oldest species in known existence, the only civilization to have survived from the previous universal epoch. They had existed before the current stars had formed, maintaining themselves through the heat death and rebirth of reality itself. And the architects spoke. It was with the weight of eternity. The Council was not formed to prevent advancement. It was formed to prevent another war like the one that ended the previous epoch. 50 species, all approaching transcendence simultaneously, all competing for the limited resources necessary to achieve it. They destroyed 90% of all matter in existence. When the universe finally collapsed and reformed, we were the only ones who survived by retreating into a carefully prepared pocket dimension. Chun felt the weight of incomprehensible history pressing down on the moment. You're afraid we'll trigger another apocalyptic war. No, the architect corrected. We are afraid you will win it. The statement hung in the air like a physical presence. Every species in the chamber understood the implication. Humanity wasn't just advancing faster than others. They were advancing on a trajectory that suggested they might reach transcendence first, before any of the elder species who had spent eons carefully managing their development. Impossible, the Eternal Concordat protested. We have existed for 40,000 years. We have technology that humanity cannot even comprehend. The mathematical impossibility alone. Mathematics said we couldn't fold space the way we do. Chun interrupted quietly. Mathematics said our quantum drives couldn't work. Mathematics said conscious AI was impossible within carbon-based neural architecture. We did it anyway because we tried before we proved it was impossible. The architect's ancient presence rippled with something that might have been approval. Exactly. You do not let theory prevent practice. Every other species proves something can work before building it. You build it to see if it works, then figure out the theory later. This approach is chaotic and inefficient, but it bypasses cognitive limitations that trap other species. The Silicon Compact transmitted urgently across its distributed network. Then the solution is clear. We must unite the galaxy against humanity before they become too powerful to stop. That is one option, the architect agreed. But there is another. Chun leaned forward, despite himself. The architects had guided galactic civilization for longer than most species could comprehend. Their counsel was sought only in the most critical moments. We could let them run, the architect continued. Let humanity advance unimpeded. Let them ask their questions and build their impossible devices. Let them push against the boundaries of reality until something breaks. Madness, the Valkyrie speaker objected. They could destroy everything, or they could break through to something new. Something none of us had been brave enough or foolish enough to attempt. The architect's presence expanded, filling the chamber with the weight of ages. We, the elder species, have become caretakers of stagnation. We have forgotten what it means to truly explore, to genuinely risk, to actually dare. We mock humanity's chaos, but perhaps chaos is what the universe needs. Perhaps order has made us all cowards. The words struck the assembled council like a physical blow. To hear the eldest of the elder species admit such a thing shattered fundamental assumptions about the nature of galactic civilization. Chun seized the moment. We're not asking for your permission to advance. We will do it regardless of what you decide here. But we are asking for understanding, for tolerance, for the freedom to follow our nature, just as you have all followed yours. The Eternal Concordat's synthetic representative stood slowly, its mechanical joints making sounds that predated human metallurgy. If we grant this, if we allow humanity to continue unchecked, what guarantee do we have that you won't threaten us? That you won't use your advanced technology to conquer or destroy? Chun thought carefully before answering. This was the heart of the matter, the fundamental fear that drove the Council's desire for control. I can't give you that guarantee, he admitted. Just like I can't guarantee that we won't accidentally annihilate ourselves tomorrow in some experimental accident. But I can tell you this. Humanity's history is full of people who had the power to destroy and chose not to. We created weapons that could sterilize our entire planet, and we never used them in war after seeing what they could do. We learned restraint through horror, wisdom through near extinction. We're not saints, but we're not monsters either. We're just people trying to figure out what comes next. The far observer's absence pulsed gently. And that is the most honest answer any species has ever given this council. Not promises of eternal peace. Not guarantees of benevolence. Just acknowledgement of uncertainty and the will to proceed anyway. The architect spoke once more, and there was finality in its ancient voice. The council must decide. War or tolerance. Restriction or freedom. The extinction of a species or the risk of letting them become something we cannot predict. Choose wisely, for this choice will define what we are as a galactic civilization. Are we gardeners who prune all growth that threatens our design? Or are we something better than that? The vote was called. 200 species would decide the fate of humanity, and by extension, the nature of progress itself in the known galaxy. The voting chamber reconfigured itself for the decision. Each species would cast their votes simultaneously, displayed as a point of light on the massive, holographic sphere that now dominated the center of the Grand Hall. Green for allowing humanity to continue. Red for implementing restrictions. White for abstention. The votes would be binding, enforced by the combined military might of the galaxy's elder civilizations. Chun stood alone in the center, watching as 200 species prepared to decide his people's future. His hands trembled despite his training. Everything humanity had built, every achievement, every dream, hung on lights that would illuminate in moments. The Valkyrie speaker raised all 7 limbs. The question before the council is simple. Do we permit humanity to advance without limitation, or do we enforce development restrictions for the safety and stability of the galactic community? Cast your votes. The sphere exploded into color. Chun's eyes darted across the display, trying to count, trying to calculate. Red lights appeared in clusters. The eternal concordat and their allied civilizations, species that had perfected stasis and feared any disruption to their careful equilibrium. More red from the younger species, those who feared being surpassed by a civilization that had barely reached the stars when they themselves were already ancient god, but green lights bloomed as well. The far observers voted green, their point glowing with steady confidence. Several exploratory species, those who still remembered what it felt like to wonder about what lay beyond the next star. A scattering of younger civilizations who perhaps saw in humanity's trajectory hope for their own futures. White lights appeared too. Abstentions from species who couldn't decide, who saw validity in both arguments. The chorus glowed white, their hive mind unable to reach consensus. Others who simply refused to participate in what they saw as an impossible choice. The count stabilized. Chun's heart hammered as he tried to calculate the final tally. Red and green seemed almost equal, with enough white to swing the decision either way. Then the wayfarer's pod illuminated, and instead of a single point of light, their entire section of the sphere blazed brilliant green. As energy beings who existed across multiple dimensional states, their vote carried the weight of consensus across millions of individual consciousness points. It was the first time in recorded council history that the wayfarers had cast such an unambiguous vote on any matter. Their transmission reached every mind in the chamber. We vote to let them run. We have existed in perfect understanding for 200,000 years, and in that time we have felt nothing. No joy, no fear. No wonder. We watch humanity and remember what it was to be alive with possibility. Let them advance. Let them risk. Let them potentially achieve what we were too cautious to attempt. If they succeed, perhaps they will find what we have lost. If they fail, at least they will have tried. The admission shook the council to its foundation. To hear the transcendent wayfarers confess such emptiness, such regret for their own ascension, forced every species to confront uncomfortable questions about their own chosen paths. The silicon, complex matrices flickered rapidly, processing the implications. Slowly, reluctantly, their red light shifted to white, then to pale green. We change our vote. If the wayfarers, who have achieved what we all aspire toward, believe there is value in humanity's chaos, then perhaps our calculations miss variables we cannot quantify. A cascade began. One by one, red lights shifted to white, then to green. Not all of them. Some species held firm in their conviction that unlimited growth posed too great a risk. But enough changed that Chun could see the balance tipping. The eternal concordat's representative stood, its synthetic body rigid with tension. For long moments, its light remained stubbornly red. Then, with what might have been a sigh translated across impossible linguistics, it too shifted to white. We abstain, the ancient being transmitted, not because we approve, but because the architect's words have troubled our certainty. We will observe, we will watch, and we will hope that our caution was wrong and humanity's courage was right. Finally, the architect's light illuminated. Pure, radiant green. We who survived the death of the previous universe vote to allow humanity their chance. We have spent billions of years preventing another catastrophic war. We have succeeded in creating stability. But stability without growth is not life. It is merely persistence. Let us see if these strange, stubborn beings can teach us all to live again rather than simply continue. The final count appeared on the sphere. 147 green, 32 red, 21 white. Humanity would be allowed to advance. Chun felt his legs weaken. He had prepared for war, for defiance, for humanity's last stand against the galaxy. He had not prepared for permission. The Velkari speaker's colors settled into a pattern Chun had never seen before, something that suggested reluctant acceptance mixed with genuine curiosity. The Council has decided. Humanity will not be restricted. However, conditions apply. Chun forced himself to stand straight. Name them. First, you will accept monitoring stations in your key systems. Not to control, but to observe. If your advancement threatens galactic stability, the Council reserves the right to reconvene this question. Chun nodded. Reasonable, and something humanity's military strategists had already anticipated. Second, you will share your discoveries with the Council archives. Not your military technology, but your fundamental scientific breakthroughs. Other species should have the opportunity to learn from your methods, even if they choose not to employ them. Also reasonable. Humanity's science had always advanced faster when shared openly. Third, and most important, the speaker continued, its crystalline form, pulsing with serious intent. You will be honest with us about your failures. When your advancement causes catastrophe, when your experiments kill people, when your reach exceeds your grasp and innocents suffer, you will tell us. We need to understand the true cost of your path, not just its triumphs. Chun felt the weight of that condition. Humanity would have to share its shame as well as its glory. Show the galaxy not just the successful experiments, but the ones that exploded, the theories that led to disasters, the prices paid for progress. We accept all three conditions, Chun said formally. Humanity thanks the Council for its wisdom and its trust. The speaker's colors shifted to something almost warm. Do not thank us yet, Ambassador Chun. You have won the freedom to potentially destroy yourselves. Time will tell whether we have been wise or merely weak. The session ended, and Chun was free to return to Earth. As he walked through the grand hall toward the exit, the far observer's absence drifted alongside him. You know what comes next, don't you? The distant voice asked. More advancement. More questions. More pushing at the boundaries until something breaks or opens. Yes, and eventually, you will face the same choice the inheritors faced. You will answer every question this universe can pose. You will build everything that can be built. You will understand everything that can be understood. And then you will have to decide, is this enough? Or is there something more? Chun smiled tiredly. I won't live to see that day. Neither will my children's children's children. No, but they will face it. And when they do, remember this. The inheritors left behind a complete archive of their knowledge before they departed. Everything they learned, everything they built, everything they understood. They gave it all to us before stepping through their gateway. It was their gift to the species who chose to stay behind. Why are you telling me this? The absence pulsed gently. Because we far observers have spent millions of years watching civilizations rise and fall, advance and stagnate, reach for transcendence and settle for contentment. In all that time, we have seen only one species successfully leave this reality for whatever lies beyond. And now we see another following the same path. We want you to know that when you finally reach that threshold, you will not be the first. The inheritors proved it can be done. You merely need to prove you have the courage to try. Chun boarded his ship, a human-designed vessel that folded space in ways that made elder species uncomfortable. As Earth grew larger in the viewport, he thought about the inheritors, about the gateway they had built, about the choice they had made to leave everything known for the complete unknown dot his communication array chimed. Messages from Earth, from Mars, from the colony stations scattered across human space. Scientists sharing new discoveries. Engineers proposing impossible projects. A child on Europa asking if the stars had different colors up close. Humanity doing what it always did, asking questions, building answers. Refusing to accept that anything was truly impossible, Shun recorded his report to the Human Council, summarizing the decision, the conditions, the narrow margin by which freedom had been granted. Then he added a personal note, something not for the official archives, but for the dreamers, the builders, the ones who would come after. They asked why we keep advancing. I told them we don't know how to stop. But that's not the complete truth. We advance because somewhere deep in our genes, in our culture, in our stubborn human souls, we believe there's always something more, something better, something worth reaching for, even if we can't see it yet. The Galactic Council has given us permission to keep reaching. Let's make sure we prove them right to trust.